We are less than 2 weeks away from the end of 2023, which means we are less than 2 weeks away to the college football playoffs and all of the New Year's Six bowls that go into that and surround that. So, lots of excitement coming up. This is one of the best playoffs and best set of sugar bowls, set of New Year's Six bowls that we've had in recent memory. So, again, a lot to be excited about and a lot to break down. If you don't know who we are Statletics. We love football. We love to dabble in analytics and a little bit of sports betting every now and then. So what we're going to do is we're going to give some big game breakdowns for the playoffs, for the New Year's Six bowls, give our picks on each one, what we think is going to happen and what not. Before we do that, Seth, how we doing, man?
Doing good. Came down a little sick, but we're working through it. I'm ready for college football. Ready for Christmas. Honestly, it's one of the best times of the year with college basketball, college football, playoffs. Can't ask for much more.
I know, man. I know there's so much excitement going on. I feel like it's the busiest time of the year for us personally. Trying to get both NFL, college football, and college basketball projections spun up and going. It's a lot. So, but hey, we got working college basketball projections, and they're actually doing phenomenal to start the year. So, lots to be excited about. If you're into college basketball, stay tuned. We will have some content coming out. And of course, you can find all of our projections at Statletics_ on X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't really know anybody who actually calls it X. It's always going to be Twitter. But find all of that information there. Make sure to check us out. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the bang. Alabama, Michigan. The 1 versus 4. Alabama, the team that a lot of people think stole a spot from Florida State. Whatever you think, it is what it is, and Alabama is that team. So, as we begin to preview this game, we have two different teams that went through two different seasons. And so we have Michigan 13-0. A lot of people are very skeptical about this team due to the schedule that they played in the 2023 season. A lot of people are kind of discrediting them and what they've been able to do at this point. Alabama kind of went through the opposite. They started off slow. They definitely are one of the more, most improved teams down the 2023 stretch. And they lost to Texas, who's playing Washington in the 2-3 spot. So after that loss to Texas, Nick Saban really turned it around. Yeah. And not only did they turn it around, he turned it around in a sense where they went through a gauntlet of teams. The teams that they played, I mean, they definitely have the advantage in the sense of games in which they've played that prepped them for big time moments. And so I don't think there's anybody that would sit here and argue with me that Alabama played the tougher strength of schedule and they have a better resume than Michigan, to be honest. Even though Michigan's undefeated and whatnot, what they've done in Michigan is really impressive. It's really hard to go undefeated in the Big Ten. They do have significant wins over Penn State and Ohio State, which is big in its own right. But still, comparatively speaking, Alabama gets the nod from me in the strength of schedule. So when I think about this game, I think of something along the lines of, has Michigan actually played somebody like Jalen Monroe? And I think Jalen Monroe is unique in his own right, that any team that hasn't played him probably hasn't played anybody like Jalen Monroe. There are a few quarterbacks that I could say play like Jalen Monroe, and a lot of them,
especially not anyone in the Big Ten. I can't think of anyone in the Big Ten that runs like Monroe does.
Exactly. The best quarterbacks that Michigan has faced up to this point have been Drew Aller and Kyle McCord. So, with that being said, I turn the tables to another question. I'm very interested to know what kind of significant difference it makes having Harbaugh back in the sidelines, because they really went most of the year without their head coach.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I forget how impressive that is to go undefeated. So as I sit here and say, Michigan, they had the least, they had a easier schedule than Alabama, which they did, but still doing that with an interim head coach for 80% of his games is still impressive. So I'm curious to what kind of dynamic comes back with Jim Harbaugh being back. What is the added value? Of course there's added value. He's the head coach. There's better decision making. This team is built around Harbaugh. So I'm very interested to know what kind of, implicit effect that makes on this game.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Nick Saban going up against Jim Harbaugh. Nick Saban really deserves a ton of credit for turning this team around. It's the craziest change I've seen from the start to finish that I've seen in a long time. I mean, this team was, headed in bad places,
Right.
especially against USF earlier in the season. So, but Jalen Monroe versus Michigan defense, I think, will be the highlighted matchup of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before I get into any of the numbers, any of the big game breakdown stuff, Seth, Michigan is a 1.5 point favorite in this game, and it started off at like 2.5. So it's already kind of squeezing down. And we look at it, the public is really, really hammering Alabama. 75% of the tickets are on Alabama. 84% of the handle is on Alabama, according to Action Network. What's your reaction to this? Are you leaning one way? Are you surprised about the spread? Were you expecting this? Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think.
So first and foremost, I do believe that Alabama did steal that playoff spot from Florida State. However, I will sit here and openly say that Alabama is better than Florida State and will give us a better show and definitely has the better opportunity to beat Michigan. Kind of like you said, like after that Texas game and when they were going through the quarterback changes and stuff, like we thought this Alabama team was going to be pretty rough this year. I wouldn't have assumed they'd be 12-1 at this point, going through all the QB changes, but I don't know. I really like Michigan's defense here. I think if there is a defense that can help contain Milroe, it's Michigan's. I think JJ McCarthy is going to have. I think he's going to have a great game against the Alabama defense. I don't know. I'm so torn here. Like I want to make a pick, but I'm still like on the fence. If I'm leaning one way, I think I'm going to lean Michigan -1.5. I just keep seeing too much hype on Alabama, and I keep seeing too many people confident in Alabama, and I just feel like that never fares well.
Damn it. I wanted to go against each other on this really bad. I wanted to. I really did. And at first, I was leaning Alabama, and that's not to say that I won't down the stretch, but I think I'm going to flag plant Michigan with you. I'm skeptical, and if I had to put a confidence rating on it between 1 and 10, I'd put like a 2.
Yeah.
But I think I am. And my thing is Michigan, they haven't had to do anything offensively. And to their defense, why would you if you hadn't had to? People were like, oh, JJ McCarthy, he threw 8 times in a game against, so-and-so. And I'm like, why? He didn't have to.
Yeah, there's no need for it.
What's, if any coach in America has the ability to hand the ball off to 2 different star running backs behind the offensive line that they have and find success constantly, why do it? Why put the ball in the air if you don't have to? And when I say that, it's ridiculous. PFF grades Michigan as the 9th best run block team in the nation. Alabama's actually 6th, but pass blocking a little different. Michigan at 54th, Alabama at 50th. So that'll be an interesting matchup in itself. But you don't have to if you like. There's no reason to. And Michigan, they lack explosive plays. They hardly have any. But what's funny is on the flip side, they actually have a really, really impressive success rate on the offensive side of the ball, albeit they're 117th in FBS and explosive play rate generated. But they are 9th in the nation in FBS and overall offensive success rate. So it's again, like just because they don't have these deep balls all the time or home runs by their running backs all the time, they're still finding success.
Yeah, they grit and grind down the field. They don't need those big plays.
Really, really high rate. So I'm not going to hop over on the side of look at their offensive stats. It's not good. It's, they won't be able to keep up. Like, I don't necessarily agree. Now, do I think that Alabama has the advantage in where if they press against this Michigan defense and force JJ McCarthy to use his arm where he really hasn't had to all year? That's an advantage for Alabama. But I'm not going to necessarily throw in the towel on this Michigan offense, especially when their defense is as good as it is. We look at them, they're the number 2 in total defense and they're number 1 scoring defense in the nation. So that's saying something. And let's not forget that Alabama, they're not bulletproof. They're the most improved team, certainly. They're a team that absolutely nobody wants to play, certainly. But think about the games they gave up. Look what certain teams did down the stretch to their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what Auburn was able to do. They were able to find success. Look at what Tennessee was able to do in the first half of that game. They were able to find success in the air. So if JJ McCarthy can get it going, it's not like they're going up against this brick wall by any
Right.
means. Alabama's defense has certainly picked it up by late. They have the number 18th total defense, number 17th scoring defense. They're number 13th in FBS in overall success rate allowed, and but they're number 92nd in FBS in explosive play rate allowed. So, albeit Michigan doesn't generate explosive plays, Alabama has a tendency to give up explosive plays.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an option. But in my opinion, I think that Michigan will turn this game into a game where they're going to do their thing. They're going to say, "Hey, I'm going to challenge your big men to meet my big men at the rim and see if you guys can win outright."
Right.
And what was crazy is Alabama did do that with Georgia. Alabama won that game because their offensive and defensive line was able to push around Georgia's offensive defensive line. Nobody can say that. Nobody's ever done that in the past. So for me, it's a challenge at the line of scrimmage. Who can do what at the line of scrimmage? And I think Michigan has the nod there. I think Michigan barely inks out a win in a really tight game. So not to discredit Alabama, I think they're a phenomenal team, but I think Michigan will be able to stronghold them and eke them out there at the end. I'm taking Michigan minus 1.5.
Nice.
Yeah. So certainly the one I'm most excited for. Definitely that game.
Yeah, that's potential to be like one of the best games we've seen in a while. I am really excited for that.
It will be truly, truly phenomenal. So let's take it over to the other college football playoff game. Texas versus Washington. And my goodness, dude, the Washington Huskies has defied all odds. And I have been down on the Huskies.
Both of us have.
A lot. I hate that I have been because I've been wrong. I thought Oregon would beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship. I thought this and that. And it's just, I thought, and I've been wrong. They proved me wrong every single time. And now when we look at this, Texas is favored by 4. And statistically speaking, Texas is the better team. That's why Vegas has Texas rated higher. But it begs the question is this team just built differently, psychologically and mentally speaking? Because they go out there and they execute better than any team I've ever seen. There's no better in-game. There's no better team that makes in-game adjustments better than Washington. And that's a credit to their head coach who just won Coach of the Year. But and this also brings me to the point of Michael Penix gets a full month to recover. We know he was banged up at the end of the season. Jalen McMillan gets to recover. He'll be back. Rome Odunze is one of the best offensive weapons in college football. And so with this team getting healthy, they're only more dangerous. So when we look at that, take that in consideration about this Washington team. Texas on the flip side, they're only progressing upwards. Their offense is looking dynamite. Quinn Ewers is really just shredding teams left and right with his arm. It's super impressive what he's been able to do, especially banged up at times. Steve Sarkisian remains, to me, one of the best play callers in college football. He's truly got a gifted mind when it comes to college football offense. So credit to them. I think their offense will be able to keep up with the Washington Huskies. If there was an offense to do it in the playoffs, it's definitely Texas. And keep in mind, this game is in New Orleans in the Dome. So there will be no shortage of points. Now, the over-under is sitting at 63.5, maybe a little more by now. But I look at this matchup, and there's one. Texas looks better really just about in every single spot except the offensive passing game. Texas rushes the ball better. In fact, the Huskies ranked 98th nationally with 125 rushing yards per game. Really not much to say there. We know that their run game lacks a little bit. But Texas, their secondary, tends to give up a lot of explosive plays. Yeah. In fact, they're 86th in FBS in passing explosive play rate allowed. And my goodness, I think Washington's going to exploit that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, will Texas be able to keep up? Certainly, they have the offense to do that. So that's the hole that we see. That's the where we see Washington capitalizing and coming out with a win. And this isn't news to anybody, but I'm just saying, not where Washington's biggest offensive strength is a perfect match against Texas's biggest offense or defensive weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something to take into consideration when we think about these picks and who we think is going to also cover the spread. So before I get into any more numbers, Texas -4, 63.5 point total. It's probably going to climb up even more since it's in the dome. Snap reaction to this, man. What do you think? What's your gut feeling? What does the eye test tell you? Let me know how you feel about this game.
Well, honestly, I thought the total was going to be a little higher. I'm expecting a lot of points here. I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense. Penix and Ewers, I think, are going to go crazy. And I don't know. I like Washington. I didn't throughout the year. You and I bashed him. We never gave him the time. And we heard it in the comments. I look at the comments, and he's like, you guys never give Washington credit. I think it's time to give Washington credit. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to win, but I'm going to take them +4. I think they can keep it within 3. I can see like a 42-45 game. Washington winning outright or Texas winning by 3, but I think there's going to be points. I like the over, and I like Washington +4.
Yeah, that's so. For the sake of throwing out the projections, and again, you can find the projections at Statletics_. The projections have this game as a pick even, pretty much 33-33, actually.
Okay.
So I think if you were to hand me a piece of paper with all of the metrics and you blinded me from the teams, I had no idea who was who, and I looked at the numbers, I would say I really do think Texas is going to win this game. Mm-hmm. They have, if we flip it over on the defense side of the ball, let's compare the two defenses. Texas is 17th overall in FBS and defensive success rate, which is offensive success rate allowed. Washington 106th. They are in passing success rate, they're 32nd. Washington 57th. Rushing success rate allowed. Texas is 6th in the FBS. Washington 129th. So what worries me is I think that Texas, even though they're missing their starting running back, they're going to be able to get it going on the ground, control the clock, and kind of get ahead and cruise control pretty much.
Ooh.
But just because Washington doesn't have a good running game, it's been getting better as of late, but just because they don't have a good Washington running game doesn't mean I don't think they're going to find success. I think Michael Penix will be able to do whatever he wants to do against this Texas secondary. The only worry is will they be able to protect him in the pocket? Because Texas defensive line is extremely impressive and one of the more talented ones in all of college football. So my only concern is, will they be able to protect him in the pocket? I'm not so sure. But do I think Michael Penix can carry this Washington team on his own, especially with all of his weapons healthy? One of the best wide receiver corps in all of college football? Absolutely. I think this team is destined for success. This reminds me a lot of the TCU team last year, but better, where I think they've been in a lot of games where they had a lot of close calls, and it just felt like everything was going their way until the very end when they were mollywopped by Georgia. But the numbers would tell me to take Texas. Texas on paper is the better team. But I've done this too many times.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this too many times where I've sat here and I've been like, this Washington team, they're not built well enough to keep up. They're not built well enough on the defense side of the ball. They're going to let all of these explosive plays, but it doesn't matter. Their offense is so good that it doesn't matter who scores against them because they'll just be right there.
Yep.
They'll keep up. And this is going to be an absolutely electric offensive game, especially in the Dome. I'm taking Washington to win on a last-minute field goal, and I think they're headed to the championship. So
nice.
It's going to be a fun one. Ride the projections, baby.
Love it.
All right. We're going to shift from the college football playoffs over to the New Year's Six. And disclaimer, there's a lot of opt-outs, QB not playing, whatever it may be. So we're going to try and take that stuff into consideration with what we can. So just note that. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Drop your favorite picks, drop your favorite bets, whatever it may be. Let us know who you got in the college football bowl season. We love scanning the crowd for that information. So we appreciate you guys watching. New Year's 6. There's a couple good games, depending on what you look at. But one that is the most intriguing, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is the Orange Bowl. Let's talk about the two teams who really a lot of people can make an argument that they should be in the playoffs. Georgia is one of them. Florida State's the other. Florida State's obviously missing Jordan Travis, the only reason they didn't get into the playoffs. And they are 14-point underdogs to Georgia, who a lot of people also think should have been in the playoffs just because they had one loss in their conference championship game. Doesn't mean they're out of the bottom four. Now, that's a conversation for another day. Whatever you may think, it doesn't matter. They're playing in the Orange Bowl. Now, without Jordan Travis, everybody wants to know, is this Florida State team still the same team and capable of winning big-time games like they were? So that's why, in my opinion, it's one of the most intriguing games. They're 2-touchdown underdogs. And it's like, will their defense be able to do enough to kind of stalemate this Georgia offense and keep it close? Will it get out of control early? And Georgia, are they going to take out a bunch of anger on this Florida State team? I don't know. We just got word that Carson Beck is coming back. I'm monitoring. I think he's going to play in this game.
Yeah, he is.
Since he is coming back.
Yeah.
But, with these games, I don't want to say anything with too much confidence because things can change in a matter of a second. So the Georgia offense will be pretty much at full go. Florida State, obviously missing Jordan Travis, but I think comparatively speaking, they'll have everybody they had in the last few games of the season.
Yeah.
So before I get into some numbers and stuff and whatnot, Florida State plus 14 in the Orange Bowl. What do you think happens here? With all of the emotions that goes into this game, with all of the drama that goes into this game, what's your vibe on this one? Let me know.
So I believe Roadmaker will be back for Florida State, right? Their second string. Remember, he took that huge hit against Florida,
correct,
and was out. Their third string, who was from actually Millington, Tennessee, he looked lost out there, and rightfully so. I mean, he was a freshman who had never played in a big time game like that. I'm not saying Roadmaker's a Jordan Travis, but Roadmaker's going to be able to move this offense more than what the third string was able to do. I think Florida State's going to be able to score, not a lot. I do think it'll be more low scoring, but I could see a 28-17 game, Georgia winning by 11. So I think I'm going to take the points and take Florida State.
Nice. Now, there's so much going on. I'm trying to find my projections again. There we are. Okay. So in this game, all things considered, and taking into note my projections, they don't really take in opt-out, injuries, weather, vibes. They just take in the team performance. There's some of their metrics and momentum. So it kind of weights performance later on, more recently than it does, from the beginning of the year. So my projections have this as Georgia minus 11. They think Florida State can cover the 14. They still think Georgia is going to win by, more than 2 possessions naturally. But I think Florida State has the defense to do it. And so there's one of two scenarios in which I see happening. One is the unprobabilistic chance that Florida State just boycotts this game. They show up for warm-ups and they never show up after that. So
that would be something.
It would be hilarious. I kind of hope they do it just to give a big middle finger to ESPN. But the second is, are they going to show up and be like, we need to prove everybody wrong? And I really hope this is the case. I think Georgia's the better team? Sure. But I hope that Florida State shows up motivated, wanting to prove that they deserve that spot. So I think Norvell, being the coach that he is going to have this team going, and they're going to want to make a statement and prove that they deserve to be in the college football playoffs. And with that being said, I think naturally that leads me to believe that they're going to have to cover the 14-point spread, just because of a few things. When we look at the offensive ratings comparison, of course, Florida State is second to Georgia in nearly every category, except for explosive play rate. Florida State's got some good playmakers that can really make a lot happen in space. They actually have the 5th best explosive play rate on the offensive side of the ball in FBS, but 65th in the country in overall offensive success rate compared to Georgia's 5th. Now, Georgia's very similar to Michigan. They have a high success rate but low explosive play rate, actually 93rd in explosive play rate. Flip it over on the defensive side of the ball. Metrically speaking, Florida State's defense is, a good bit better than Georgia's. Not a lot. Georgia still has a top 25 defense. Florida State, 6th overall in FBS in offensive success rate allowed. Georgia, 31st. Rushing success rate allowed, 28th for Florida State, 69th for Georgia.
Nice.
So I think Florida State can actually lean into their running game a little bit and find success on the ground. The only problem is that Florida State's rushing success rate is not that good on the offensive side of the ball. So I think Florida State can keep it close. I certainly don't think they win, but I think they come out as the more motivated team. Their defense is going to show out and prove that they deserve to be in the college football playoffs. Now, do they win? No. Do they cover? Sure.
But like that really does suck. Like you could miss the playoffs and then your bowl game, you have to play Georgia. Like that's like the worst type of scenario that could happen.
Yeah, I know. That's not fun. So, moving on. Let's talk about the Ole Miss Rebels. Lane Kiffin has them rolling in the portal. This team's going to be one to be reckoned with next year. Versus Penn State. Penn State had arguably one of the best defenses in college football. They had the number 1 overall offensive success rate allowed in FBS, so pretty good on the defensive side. Drew Aller has been something to watch over this past year because he had a lot of hype coming into the season, and I feel like he really kind of let us down. But to his credit, I think it was because Penn State didn't really trust him. And you recognize that in the play calling. They were very, very conservative. They didn't really let him air it out as much. They really relied into the running game. They have 2 stout running backs that they can lean on. So this game will be fun for me. The opt-outs, there's a few on both sides, but I'm going to treat this as, as we've watched these 2 teams all year. Ole Miss. Offensively speaking, they have one of the better play callers in college football in Lane Kiffin. We know that. They're not going to stand out on paper, metrically speaking, but they're certainly capable just about as anybody. 42nd overall in offensive success rate, 19th overall in explosive play rate on the offensive side of the ball. And that really, really shows in the passing game. They're 17th in FBS in passing explosive play rate, more so than their rushing game. Penn State, total opposite offense. They do have a better offensive success rate than Ole Miss, sitting at 25 nationally in FBS, but their explosive play rate is 3rd to dead last, 131st in FBS. So not a very explosive team. We just mentioned that the Penn State was very conservative in their play calling, and it'll be extremely interesting to see what happens in this game, because if Ole Miss gets up, I think they win. I think it's really about the first strike here, because with the first strike, both teams can go into a way in which they play the game and kind of control it. So if Penn State goes up first, they can rely on their defense and lean into, slowing the game down and making this about, the defense, the rushing game, controlling the clock as much as they possibly can. If Ole Miss gets up, then I think they're really going to let loose and try to run up the tab on the scoreboard. But again, we mentioned Penn State, one of the best defenses in the country, number 1 overall success rate, number 2 overall success rate against the pass, number 2 overall success rate against the rush. They do allow a bit. Their explosive play rate allowed is not that good, 85th in the country. So we'll see if Ole Miss can generate some explosive plays. I certainly think they will if everybody's healthy and capable and playing in this game. I'm taking Ole Miss to win this game outright. I'm taking them to cover the +4 and win outright.
Interesting.
Let me know what you got.
So I think you broke it down perfectly. Both these teams have great offenses. I think I'm going to give the defensive edge to Penn State. I think if Penn State's able to go up a score or two, I think that they can really set in heavy and rely on their defense. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think Penn State's going to win this game. I think they're going to win by 7 to 10 points. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Opt-outs, we don't know the full reports and stuff, but yeah, give me Penn State here.
Okay. And just for the sake of having this out there for everybody, my projections have Penn State 24, Ole Miss 23.
Interesting.
So +1 for Ole Miss rather than +4. Going to ride with the projections on the cover, but I actually think Ole Miss is going to win. So just having that out there. Moving on, Missouri versus Ohio State. And
this is an interesting one.
This is interesting. That's a word. In the Cotton Bowl, Kyle McCord is out. Ohio State is without their starting quarterback. So let's go ahead and say that. Missouri, this team is fired up. They're recruiting better than anybody right now. My goodness. They're
seeing that on Twitter.
They have a top 10 class. It's very well going to end up as a top 5 class. Drinkowitz is out there balling. Everybody for their team is going to be playing in this game. I think there's a lot of prospects that are going to be playing as well. So, and I think that with this being the best year that Missouri has had in Lord knows how long, that it'll be, everybody's playing.
Yeah.
This matchup is very fun because both defenses are actually really, really solid in a way. Ohio State, 15th overall success rate allowed, and Missouri, 21st. Now, we look on the offensive side of the ball. Missouri, 27th in FBS and offensive success rate. Ohio State, 17th. Now, all of those numbers bake in Kyle McCord. So, before I get into anything else, I'm curious what you think because it's now flipped to Missouri -1.
Yeah.
And from a betting standpoint, from the game, like, what's your feel on this? Let me know what you think.
So first, I still cannot believe that McCord ended up at Syracuse of all teams. I thought that was very strange. I definitely wouldn't have been on my top 50 teams list, like if I had to pick 50 teams. But yeah, I think a big factor here is motivation. Kind of like you said, Missouri is rolling on the recruiting trail. Been seeing it all over Twitter and stuff. People are excited. I think they're going to play with a lot of passion in this game. Like you said, I don't think many people are going to sit out. I think Ohio State's sulking again. They've lost to Michigan, third year in a row. They're missing the playoffs. I think motivation is a big factor here, and I think Missouri is going to treat this game like a national championship to them because this is definitely the best season they've had in a long time. This is a big opportunity for them, and I think Missouri comes out on top by 3 to 7 points.
Okay. So, an interesting note. So, Devin Brown is going to be the starter for Ohio State in this game. And a lot of people don't really remember this. I think I'm not even sure I'm remembering this correctly, but if I remember right, there was actually a quarterback battle going on between him and Kyle McCord. And then he actually got hurt at the beginning of the season, which is why Kyle McCord kind of came out on top. So, I think that he's certainly going to be capable in this game. Again, motivation factor plays a huge role in it. But with my projections, not even accounting for Kyle McCord sitting out, it actually likes Missouri straight up.
Sweet.
To win outright. So I'm going to ride with Scarlet in this bad boy. I think Missouri wins outright as well. Motivation factor is a big thing. And I think that Missouri's is just playing at a really, really high level right now. And I think that this team wants to win more than anybody. So, metrically speaking, Ohio State has the nod on the defensive side of the ball, but not by much. It's marginal. Missouri gives up more explosive plays, but on the offensive side of the ball, especially with Kyle McCord out, Missouri gets the nod there. Metrically speaking, they have a better rushing attack than Ohio State does, and they have a better passing attack now, assuming Kyle McCord out, which he is. So,
right.
Let's go with Missouri. Next one, Liberty versus Oregon. Oregon, 17.5 point favorite. This, I just like, there's no overlap in any of the teams that these two played. There's no way to judge these two teams.
Well, Liberty literally had like the worst strength of schedule, didn't they? Like they were literally, I think they were near dead last in strength of schedule.
Right. So for me, I still don't know the status on Bo Nix and if he's going to be playing in this or not.
Okay.
At the time of recording.
Is that what you were looking up?
Yeah, I looked it up while we were talking about Alabama, Michigan, actually, and I couldn't even find anything there. So what? Oh, gosh, I look here. I have a bunch of metrics in front of me. I have a show notes, and I have all of these offensive and defensive stats that really show. But it takes them Bo Nix into account, and it's hard to adjust, because I'm looking at Liberty, the third best offensive success rate in all of FBS. Adjusted, no. So again, it's like strength of schedule. Yeah. They're throwing against, I don't know, some bums. But at the same time, Caden Salter looked really good in the games that I was able to watch of Liberty. Yeah. He's truly a tremendous quarterback, and I don't want to discredit that. So I think they'll be able to score points against Oregon. But it's truly amazing that these two teams got matched up, because I'm happy for Liberty to have the chance to be able to say, like, hey, we can hang with the big dogs. We deserve a spot in the NY6 Bowl. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, Oregon, if they play full speed, they might actually like run Liberty out the stadium.
Yeah.
And we look at this, Oregon, second overall offensive success rate. I don't think Bo Nix being out would certainly affect it, but I think they would still be able to find success against this Liberty defense, who's 95th in FBS and explosive play rate allowed, 87th in the passing explosive play rate, 84th in rushing. And we flip that over, Oregon, they're not that explosive in the passing game, more so the dink and dunk. But in their rushing game, even though they don't run the ball that much, second most explosive rushing game in FBS. Second best success rate as well. So I think Oregon runs Liberty out the stadium.
Okay.
No matter who's playing quarterback. I think it's like 45-21 at the end of when it's all said and done.
I think it could be worse than that. First of all, shout out Liberty. That was my father's alma mater. So our family is excited to see this, but I think this has the capability of getting very ugly. I mean, if you look at Liberty's last 5 games, they played New Mexico State, UTEP, UMass, Old Dominion, Louisiana Tech, and Oregon's played Washington, Oregon State, USC. Like the matchup here is so it's like almost incomparable with the quality of teams. And I don't see Liberty being able to stop Oregon whatsoever. And I don't see Liberty being able to score as much. So I don't know. I think Oregon wins 49-13 or something like that. I think it can get really bad.
Yeah. And, my projections were they're in parallel with Vegas. It has Oregon by 19.
Okay.
But again, it's like, it's hard to adjust, you can't perfectly adjust for strength of schedule and strength of opponent and all of that. There's so many dynamic variables that requires. And it's just like, it's hard. And so with Liberty, sure, they have the offense to keep up. But again, on the flip side, I think Oregon's defense is really going to be the one that kind of squanders their hopes and dreams. Oregon's defense is 27th in FBS and offensive success rate allowed, 44th in explosive play rate allowed, 8th overall in power success allowed. So that's impressive. And they're one of the only teams that finished the regular season top 10 in EPA on the offensive side of the ball and top 10 in EPA allowed on the defensive side of the ball. So Oregon come out angry. I think Dane Lanning coaches up a good game, takes this one home. Hey, that wraps it up for our NY6 and the 2023 college football season. We will be doing college football championship previews. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. It's not over till it's over. But we appreciate you guys being here and watching all season. We will talk to you guys soon.